Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going somewhere pretty strange. We're stepping away from, the daily grind and diving into the world of long-term human isolation.
And not just feeling lonely.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Our mission here is to really uncover how the brain handles the total absence of external cues. We've got a stack of research here that explores the nature of time itself.
And reality, it's an incredibly powerful topic. Because the sources we looked at, they all suggest that when you take away those anchors...
It's the things you don't even notice, right?
Right.
Like traffic or just the light changing.
Exactly. When those are gone, the brain doesn't just get, depressed or bored. It starts to fundamentally change its own operating system.
Yeah, it's like it starts cannibalizing its own structures. And we're not talking about a couple of weeks working from home. This is deep sensory depriving isolation.
The kind that reboots you.
Right. Which brings us to the core question in all this research. Does prolonged isolation fundamentally change how the brain perceives time and reality?
And the answer, across the board, is a definite yes. It goes far beyond just a mood shift.
So it's not just feeling weird.
No, it hits your core cognitive functions. Specifically, your ability to track the passage of time. It's like the sync cable that connects your timeline to the world's timeline just gets unplugged.
Okay, let's unpack that mechanism. The research points to a very specific failure. It says if the isolation goes on long enough, the brain loses its ability to track time internally. They call it the internal clock.
Right.
So what is that exactly? What is the internal clock?
Well, it's less of a single clock and more of a whole network in your brain, mostly in the hypothalamus, and it's constantly checking in with the outside world.
Like using GPS coordinates.
That's a perfect analogy. It uses sunrise, meal times, social interactions, all as coordinates to keep its time map accurate. When those signals just vanish, the brain is lost. It can't anchor itself.
So if I'm getting this right, the brain can't just keep time on its own. It needs the outside world to sort of validate its count.
Precisely. It can't just count seconds in a vacuum. And the consequence of losing that connection is, it's profound. The internal mechanism starts to drift.
Meaning what?
It starts generating corrupted data, inaccurate time data. So you might experience what feels like 5 minutes, but an hour has actually passed. Or the other way around.
That failure, that drift, sets up the next big question, which is, what does that actually feel like? I think most of us assume time would just slow down to a crawl.
Right, that the seconds would just drag on forever.
Yeah, but the findings here are way more complex than that, aren't they?
They really are. What's so fascinating is that while, short-term boredom can make time feel slow, this deep chronic isolation does something else. It triggers a totally different kind of distortion.
That would be.
The sources, they reveal this really counterintuitive thing. In this state, time can actually feel like it's speeding up.
Speeding up.
Yeah, as one source put it feels like time runs away from you.
Wow. Time running away. That sounds like a total loss of control. So why does that happen? Why does it go from slowing down to speeding up?
It seems to be all about memory and habit. When you're living a normal life, your brain is constantly creating these little memory anchors.
Like a lunch meeting or a conversation you had.
Exactly. Those anchors define the sequence of time for you. But in deep isolation, every day is the same. The input is the same. So the brain just stops making new, distinct memories.
So it just compresses the experience. If today was identical to yesterday, it just saves them as one file.
That's exactly right. And this is where it gets really unsettling. The sources highlight this one specific detail.
Okay.
Some people in isolation report that entire days just disappear without them even noticing.
Disappear. What do you mean?
They genuinely can't account for huge chunks of time. They might remember going to sleep and then waking up only to look at a calendar and realize 3 or 4 days have gone by.
Whoa. So
Yeah.
you're awake, you're functioning, but your consciousness just isn't recording it.
It's not anchoring the sequence of events. You're basically a passenger in your own life.
That is genuinely disturbing.
And that distortion, that changes everything. It's not just your mood. It's the very fabric of how you experience life. The world starts to feel like a second reality where the rules of time just don't apply anymore.
This is where the research gets, for me, just absolutely wild.
Yeah.
Because the brain doesn't just sit there and let reality melt away.
No, it fights back.
It fights back. And this leads to maybe the most surprising finding of all. The brain will sometimes create an alternative reality.
This is its last-ditch defense mechanism. It's radical. When the internal clock fails and memory starts to go, your sanity is on the line. So the brain it substitutes the missing input with its own story.
So wait, this isn't like a classic hallucination then? It's more of a structural necessity
Precisely. The mind invents a coherent reality to stop you from completely collapsing. The sources are really clear that this is a protective measure.
for your own protection.
Yeah. And they describe the experience as something close to dreaming while awake.
Dreaming while awake. Okay, that makes sense of the weirdness of it. In a dream, things don't have to follow a logical sequence.
Exactly. The mind can generate anything it needs. Imaginary conversations, incredibly detailed internal worlds. It can even pull memories from 20 years ago and merge them into the present moment.
So you might not see a pink elephant in the corner, but the whole sensory texture of your reality changes.
Yes. You could have these incredibly vivid, elaborate internal dialogues with people you know. Or you could look at a cup on a table and your mind imbues it with this deep personal story. It's just filling the silence.
It's filling the chronological chaos.
Right. It's the mind doing whatever it has to do to survive.
It really makes you question how much of our sanity is just, a result of us passively agreeing with the outside world all day long.
That's the core insight, isn't it? We think of survival in physical terms, but the mind's need for a stable timeline is overwhelming. It will literally sacrifice objective reality to protect that feeling of coherence.
Unbelievable. So just to sum up that impact, before we get to, the recovery, deep isolation doesn't just change your mood. It changes the actual feeling of time.
It turns it into something unstable, unreliable.
And that instability must be the hardest part of coming back. I mean, if your clock has been broken for months, you can't just walk outside and be okay.
No, not at all. Simply opening the door isn't enough to reset it.
Which makes sense. If the problem is the loss of external cues, the solution has to be putting them back in. So what do the sources say about reintegration? Is it slow?
It's a very long, slow process. The conclusion on this is really firm. The only way to get back to a normal sense of time is by systematically reintegrating with the world.
The brain can't just flip a switch on its own?
Nope. You have to slowly resync your internal, dreamlike timeline with the harsh, objective timeline of the real world.
With schedules and appointments and other people, that must be incredibly jarring.
It is. You need social interaction, you need consistent sunlight, you need the predictable noise of daily life to recalibrate everything. Until that happens, that sense of time is just. It stays fragile. The alternate reality doesn't just vanish.
You have to override it.
You have to deliberately override it with persistent, verifiable reality.
This brings us to a final, really heavy insight from the material. It says the experience of isolation is so destabilizing that people start to fear the instability of time, maybe even more than they fear the loneliness itself.
It's a powerful idea. Loneliness is an emotional pain. It's a lack of connection. But realizing that your own consciousness can't track the days, that's an attack on your sanity.
It's a fundamental breakdown.
It proves how much we rely on a shared reality, on a shared timeline, just to feel secure in our own head. The mind fears losing its own framework more than anything else.
Wow. This has been a really profound deep dive. To quickly recap the takeaways, we learned that deep isolation breaks the brain's internal clock, which causes time to distort and days to literally disappear from memory.
And that the brain's ultimate defense is to create an alternate reality, something like a working dream, just to keep from collapsing.
And finally, that the only way back is a slow, difficult reintegration with society to reset that clock.
Right. But for you, the listener, here's a final thought to take away from all this. If the mind is capable of just inventing a reality to protect itself, how fragile is our baseline perception of reality, even when we are not isolated? What simple external cues are you relying on every single day that you don't even notice? The sound of my voice, your commute, the light from your window. What things are keeping your internal clock wound tight and keeping your reality anchored in place right now?
It definitely makes you appreciate your daily routine. Something to think about next time you check your calendar. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.